All right. Breaking news, breaking news. We have some good news for boxing. Uh, I guess, I don't even know what to say, man. Canelo is literally straight up avoiding Jermall Charlo. Um, Give me 1 second for more details to confirm this. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to look at the receipts. Alright, I'm back. So, according to the YouTube channel Fanon Boxing, or Fanon International Boxing Channel, he made a pretty good solid video talking about, I guess, ESPN and DAZN had a lot to say about the competition of Errol Spence. But I guess, like, when it came to Canelo Alvarez, they had a huge denial, when it comes to his competition. And as, obviously the reports have came through that Canelo will be fighting Avni Yildirim, the same guy that lost to Anthony Durrell in his most recent fight for the WBC Super Middleweight Championship. Canelo is obviously fighting Yildirim because, one, Yildirim was his former sparring partner, and two, Canelo is basically breaking the WBC rules in fighting Yildirim for the sake of avoiding Jermall Charlo. Even though Jermall Charlo is stating that he's moving up to 168 to at least try to go fight Canelo, but if anything, Jermall really doesn't need to go get the Canelo fight if it's not going to go through. I think, honestly, like, him and Canelo are going to have probably one of the toughest moments in trying to make that fight. And I just think that's going to be on Canelo's team's behalf, because so many so many Mexican trainers and a lot of Mexican greats are coming out to say, like, Canelo, he's going to keep avoiding Charlo, and he's not going to go down as, like, one of Mexico's greatest fighters. If anything, Jaime Munguia, he's probably going to have more balls to face Charlo than Charlo is going to face Canelo. And or more so, like, Canelo trying to face his contemporaries for better competition. But I'm basically saying, like, Jaime Munguia, he has more Mexican pride to, defend his, legacy by trying to fight the best. And I mean, if anything, if Jaime Munguia can get a fight in with Jermall Charlo before Jermall Charlo makes any, attempt to move up to 168 in the future, I think that will be very good for Jaime's career, even if he loses, or draws against Jermall Charlo. But still, that will show that Jaime, he has confidence, and he took a chance with a very well experienced fighter like Jermall Charlo. And he's also Charlo's mandatory too. So Charlo, he's gonna have to probably honor that fight between him and Jaime. But it just won't surprise me of what's gonna go on in the next coming future, because I think, to my prediction, that, like, this is how these fights are gonna go. It's going to be Jermall Charlo versus Jaime Munguia, because Jaime, he's gonna have to activate, the whatchamacallit, the mandatory slot. And if we go to the WBC rankings, I'm going to look it up right now for middleweight. I'm very positive that Jaime Munguia is the #1 mandatory for Jermall Charlo. And if we go to it right now, Jermall Charlo is the champion, and Jaime Munguia is #1, as Sergey Derevyanchenko is #2, as I don't know who the fuck this guy's name is, Williams, he's at #3. Mashish Sulecki is at #4, and Alim Khanuli, that's that Kazakhstani fighter, that fights at middleweight. But he's at number 5. Brandon Adams is at number 6. Falco is at number 7. He's some or Falcao. He's some Brazilian fighter at number 7. And Dennis Hogan and Korobov, they're at 8 and 9. Signagi is at number 10. Hugo's at number 11. And Toriano Johnson, that was the guy that recently lost to Jaime, who is now the number 1 mandatory for Jermall. But he's at number 12. Montiel, he's that Mexican that recently beat James Kirkland. He's at number 13. And Molina, he's another Mexican fighter at number 14. And at number 15, Sirakitin, he's some Russian fighter at 15. But either way, there's a lot of great fights here. You know what I'm saying? Charlo, he has a lot of options. But don't forget about Andrade too, because Andrade, he could also fight Jaime Munguia. But I think it's coming down to the fact that Andrade, he just wants, Canelo. And I think Andrade, he's definitely going to get that opportunity if he could try to close in the door with getting Billy Joe Saunders. But something tells me that Billy Joe Saunders, he's going to make any excuse to not fight Andrade. But I really hope that fight does get made, so Andrade can have, the opportunity to beat Billy Joel, get his belt at 168, and then he could fight Caleb Plant, which would be a very awesome fight. I personally believe that will definitely be the end goal for basically trying to stop Canelo. And if Andrade can actually secure that, that path to victory against Billy Joel, I think that's going to cause a lot of issues at 168 for the bigger top dogs in the division from 160 to make it harder for Canelo to try to sweep out 168, but the easy way, because obviously Canelo, he got David Benavidez, who is actually his number one mandatory, and Avni Yildirim, he's not even his own mandatory. It's actually David Benavidez. So Yildirim was obviously selected by Canelo through the WBC, as Canelo seems to be the president of the WBC, but he's technically breaking the rules to basically just fight Yildirim instead of fighting David Benavidez. And I would really hope that David Benavidez, he could try to pressure Canelo through his fans, or probably through his own fans, to get the fight made between him and Benavidez. And if that were to happen, where David is actually pressuring Canelo, where he's actually being pressured by his fans to take these bigger fights and stop being an absolute pussy for not fighting, with the toughest competition, then Canelo's going to be left with no choice but to fight those guys, or else he's just going to look like an absolute, retard by fighting a bunch of nobodies and a bunch of, scrubs that don't match up to his style, or basically just tailor-made fighters. That's really what Canelo is doing at this point. But it will be good, or it would be good, if Canelo actually had balls to actually fight David Benavidez, fight the Charlos, fight everybody. Because at this point, Canelo, he's ruining his career as we speak by fighting Avni Yildirim, who came off of a loss against Anthony Durrell that beat him through a technical decision. So either or, it's there was not really anything that Durrell did wrong, other than, hey, he beat him, so shouldn't you give the opportunity to Anthony Durrell? Because Durrell, he came off of a win, but guess what? He lost to David Benavidez. So if we're going to be consistent here, Canelo should go after Anthony Durrell instead of going after Avni Yildirim. But no, Canelo, he likes to go after people by catching them off their biggest, losses, and then he obviously, fights guys that have a Eastern European or just a European, basically a white European fighting style where they're extremely flat-footed and they have no, defensive mechanisms to get away from, bigger punches. So basically that, that's how Canelo calls himself pound for pound #1, by basically fighting a bunch of low tier trash, European fighters, because, that's just how I see it from my American point of view, that Canelo, he's not fighting any of these undefeated rising stars of black American descent like Charlo, Andrade, Brandon Adams, he's not going to fight those guys. He's going to, I just truly believe that Canelo, he's going to continue to be ducking these tougher names in his division that are going to want to knock his head off one day. And I think Canelo, he's just going to try to play, basically, he's trying to pull off another Roberto Duran. That, that's basically what Canelo is doing. He has no true Mexican pride. He is fighting like a straight up European, coward. And that's really how, most of what the world is going to see Canelo if he continues to ruin his career with such a low-tier trash resume where he's at the peak of his career, so he should be at his prime fighting tough guys. And I mean, even with his recent fight with Callum Smith, Canelo looked absolutely horrible. He looked extremely extremely slow. His punches were pretty decent. He did manage to get the job done, but Canelo obviously fought Callum at a style where he's very comfortable, and he likes fighting guys that are extremely slow. So he figured, hey, if I could do this, if I could do this to guys, that are tailor-made for me, then it just makes it 10 times easier for me to win. And that's really how Canelo saw it. He just figured, well, fuck it. I'm not going to fight guys that I'm not going to feel comfortable at, i.e. fighting a guy like Charlo who has more movement than Canelo, and Charlo, he has more defensive ability than Canelo. Because when everyone says Canelo, he got all this, defensive, reflexes, and he has this good ring IQ. No, he doesn't. Canelo, he's never been at it with a guy like Andrade or Charlo, where their styles are more defensively mechanized, and they actually like to brawl with you, in the sense of, if you hit them, they're going to hit you back harder. But here's but the actual thing with Canelo is that he's never been in the ring with a guy that has more slickness in their jab and in their power. So basically, he's never been at it with a guy that's unpredictable, and that's what Canelo is afraid about. He doesn't want to get inside the ring with a guy that can hit him but make him psychologically confused. Because that's what Charlo and Andrade does, or that's what they do to people when they try to fight them. They just basically wait for their opponent to come to them, and then guess what? They basically do the same exact thing what their opponent did to them, but in a more defensive manner. Because with Charlo, what I like about Charlo is that Charlo, he waits for you to hit him, but he uses what you did to him, but he hits you in a more devastating fashion. Basically, Charlo, he's a pressure point fighter. If you really think about it, his punches are very precise, and he's very, very aggressive by finding the right shots and basically let the right, pressure shots or pressure punches to make you uncomfortable. Because that's really how Charlo wins his fights. He wins his fights by simply letting your pressure become his pressure. He uses his defense as his offense, and he makes everything super easy. So, similar to I would say a Roy Jones mixed with I would say a James Toney in a way. Charlo is very crafted, and he's just so universally versatile to make your style into his style, and he analyzes that, and he uses that as a means of pressuring you and making you feel absolutely uncomfortable in the fight, where he could just simply break you down slowly but surely. But with Andrade, he likes to wait for you to hit him, and Andrade, he counter punches you every single time when you try to hit him. When he uses his when he uses his jab against you, and when you try to counter jab, he just rolls over. He tries to use that shoulder roll, and then boom, he hits you with that counter right hook or left hook, and Andrade just makes it look way too easy. That's why Canelo don't want to face a guy like Andrade or Charlo, because he knows defensively he's fucked. No matter what anyone says, Canelo has never been at it with a guy that has a powerful jab to put you back where you feel very uncomfortable when he hits you, because what Charlo does, he uses his jab to make you feel uncomfortable. That's why when Bernard Hopkins was talking about Charlo the other day, of why Canelo is afraid of Charlo, i.e. Canelo, should not even think about, trying to, trying to fight Charlo, because, Charlo is such a dangerous fight, for Canelo, and, I think, Bernard said that Charlo, he would basically just roll over Canelo, because Charlo is, basically just like a steamroller. He's 10 times more stronger than Canelo. He has a longer reach than him, and his ring IQ is way too insane, where he basically cuts you off and he makes you feel like crap. He does not let you think. He does not let you breathe. He actually makes you psychologically torn. And that's basically what Bernard was explaining in his most recent interview about Charlo versus Canelo. He wants to see this fight happen because he knows stylistically Charlo, he would beat the living crap out of Canelo, and I'm pretty sure Charlo knows that. And guess what? Canelo has been avoiding Charlo for the past 5 years, leading into 6 years. So, to be honest about this, Charlo is not doing anything but trying to make the fight. Canelo don't want to make the fight. He wants to keep ducking Charlo and making things harder for Charlo to solidify his, boxing legacy. But let me ask you something. When people ask about Charlo's past opponents, who were Canelo's past opponents? We can easily see who has the more stronger resume, and you can see that Charlo has a much stronger resume than Canelo. Canelo has fought absolute bums. Callum Smith, Sergey Kovalev, and then I think the fight before that was it was against fucking... Hold on, let me take a look at it. I don't want to be dishonest. Like all these Canelo fans try to catch you off of a little lie. But yeah, the fight before that was Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs wasn't even that good of a fighter. He actually came off of a hard loss before fighting Canelo. Actually, no. He came off of a hard win. He came off of a hard win against Sergey Derevyanchenko, which Sergey Derevyanchenko beat the living crap out of Danny. If you haven't seen that fight, take a look at that fight. Sergey, even though that he got dropped in round 1, he came back and he literally wiped the floor against Danny Jacobs, which many thought Jacobs didn't even deserve to win this fight. He actually was he was actually struggling against Derevyanchenko in this fight, and Derevyanchenko made a huge comeback in the later rounds where Jacobs he almost got stopped in a sense, and Derevyanchenko just made it look too easy. Same thing with Gennady Golovkin, but no, Derevyanchenko easily just wiped the floor against Jacobs, and by Canelo's logic, he only fights guys coming off of their, toughest losses. But for him to fight Danny Jacobs, it's obviously a perfect style matchup for Canelo, because Jacobs, he's not that fast. He's actually very flat-footed, and he doesn't have that much power in his punches. and he's very stiff, and he doesn't throw that many punches to begin with. So he basically makes himself very easy for Canelo to exploit, you know, his boxing talents, and then Canelo just capitalizes off of that to use that as a advantage to go after Danny Jacobs. So, like, you know, that's obviously why Canelo took Jacobs over Derevyanchenko, because Derevyanchenko was 10 times more harder for Gennady Golovkin and Danny Jacobs combined. So that's why Canelo didn't even want that fight, because Derevyanchenko was a very dangerous opponent. And actually, Canelo, he's actually been avoiding Derevyanchenko ever since, I think Derevyanchenko was fighting at, I want to say he's only been fighting at middleweight. I don't think he's been fighting at 154. Yeah, he had his first 4 fights at a catchweight at 164, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I want to say he probably fight at 168, and then he kept himself at 160, and then had a couple catchweights at 165 and a half and 167, which obviously these are fights that I would assume were probably at super middleweight. So I could probably see that as the main reason for him taking those fights. But yeah, he went back down to 160, and his biggest fights were Danny Jacobs, Toriano Johnson, and Jermall and Gennady. But yeah, if Danny Jacobs lost to Derevyanchenko would have been the IBF, middleweight champion, and he would have been next up to fight Canelo Alvarez instead of Jack Colquet. And Gennady Golovkin probably wouldn't even be there. He probably would have been fought Charlo sooner, back in October. And then if he lost to Charlo, he would have been on his way to probably fighting, I don't know, maybe Billy Joe Saunders. Or no, he could actually fight Andrade. Yeah, Andrade. So either way, it's like Derevyanchenko, he's been widely avoided for the main reason why Jermall Charlo has been avoided. But at least him and Charlo, he made that fight with him. And Derevyanchenko, he's not even a PBC fighter, if I'm not if I'm not mistaken. But it was just good that that fight got made a lot easier compared to, Canelo fighting, all these other fights where people criticize him, knowing that he's not fighting the toughest competition. But his past 5 fights was Callum Smith, Sergey Kovalev, Danny Jacobs, Rocky effing Fielding, and Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin, that was a fight that he should have lost in the second fight. I don't really know, to be honest. Honestly, both fights were very controversial, but still, it's Gennady Golovkin was a fight that people never really asked for. But either way, it's that never really got Canelo tested, in the sense of he wasn't really expecting Gennady to give him problems, but Gennady was giving Canelo some really big punches that he did not see. But even if there was a trilogy between him and Gennady, I don't think anybody wants to see that. And I just say that because nobody doesn't give a shit about Gennady Golovkin, because he's getting super duper old, and I don't think Gennady's going to have balls to even fight a guy like Jaime Munguia or Jermall Charlo, anybody of that, caliber, to make himself more notable at the middleweight division. I don't ever see that happening. But as far as his resume goes, Canelo has fought really crappy competition. He fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., he fought Liam Smith, he fought Miguel Cotto, who was on his way out, which Cotto, if I'm not mistaken, when he was at 154, Cotto was fighting at I think, well, originally he was fighting at 147, but after he bumped up to 154, he beat the shit out of, he beat the shit out of Ricardo Mayorga, and then he beat the shit out of Antonio Margarito, which was an awesome fight, by the way, in which I was happy that he beat the living crap out of them. Beat the crap, or he got his ass beat by Floyd Mayweather. Well, no, he didn't get his ass beat. It was a decent close fight. Well, no, it was actually a unanimous, but still, him and Floyd Mayweather had a good fight, and Austin Trout, very close fight. I thought Austin Trout could have lost in this fight, but Cotto gave it his best and he lost. But once he came back, he fought Delvin Rodriguez, beat the living crap out of him. And then he fought my boy, the man, the myth, and the legend, Sergio Martinez. That was a very fun fight. I love that fight. Martinez, he got downed and he obviously got RTD'd. He obviously got TKO'd in the 10th, in his corner. And then Daniel Gale, that was a TKO. And then finally Canelo came inside the picture at 155. So Canelo fought Cotto at a catch weight at 155 instead of fighting at 160. Cotto, Canelo, what the hell are you thinking? Because obviously this is at middleweight, because he already won the middleweight title at 160. So Charlo, he wasn't even a champion he wasn't even a champion back in 2014. He was a champion in 2018 or 2019. So leading to that, after he lost to Canelo, he fought Yoshishiro Kamagi, beat the crap out of him. And then his last fight was against Saddam Ali. Honestly, all respect to Cotto. He's my boy. Cotto, I want to say, he actually became undisputed, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. No, he actually didn't. He won the WBA and the WBC at super lightweight. And then once he bumped up to 147, yeah, he won the WBA against Shane Mosley, Zab Judah, and then fucking Margarito cheated against him, which was very sad. Yeah, because his very first title fight was against, let me see. Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm keeping this video longer than expected, but Cotto's very first title shot was against, let's see, yeah, Randall Bailey. That was his very first title fight at 140. Yeah, beat the crap out of him. And after he beat him, he fought DeMarcus Corley, TKO'd his ass. And then fought Muhammad Jair Abduwalev, beat the crap out of him. And then Guilanca Branco, this is at 140, until his second to last fight at 140, leading up to 147. Beat the crap out of him, beat the crap out of Paulie. And 147, he beat Carlos Quintana. He's a two-time world champion at that point at 147. And until he met, Antonio Margarito, he lost his, WBA title. Then after that, he gained another title against Michael Jennings. Beat the crap out of Joshua Clottey. That was a great fucking fight, by the way, which he beat him by split decision. That was a really difficult fight. And then after that, Manny Pacquiao, which I believe he actually got cheated in that fight, but he, quote-unquote, got TKO'd, which is very sad. And then after that, he got a world title fight against Yuri Foreman. That was a good legendary win. Yeah, and then after that, Ricardo Mayorga beat the shit out of him, beat the shit out of Margarito, lost 2 times to Trout and Floyd Mayweather, then got Delvin, then got Sergio, then got Daniel Gale, and then sadly lost to Canelo, which, that fight didn't make any sense, but either way, I mean, Cotto, he basically did what he had to do. 3-time world champion, honestly, I got way more respect for Cotto than I do with Canelo. But you can see with the level of competition that I put out for Cotto, Cotto has a much better resume than Canelo. Canelo is fighting taxi cab drivers. He's fighting guys that are on their way out. Like Shane Mosley and Kermit Cintron and Josecito Lopez. Those guys, they were on their way out. Josecito is not a natural 154-pounder. He's a 147-pounder. Even though that he fought him for the world title back in 2012 for the WBC super welterweight title, leading into the Austin Trout fight and Floyd Mayweather fight, which he was 42-0 facing Floyd, got his ass whooped by Floyd, and then he goes on and faced Angulo and Lara, which Lara simply destroyed him. He shouldn't have won that fight, but this resume overall pretty much shows that Canelo, he's been fighting low-tier competition. So compare him to Charlo. And before I even wrap this video up, because I gotta go to bed. Charlo's record is way more stronger than Canelo. His last 5 opponents: Sergey Dervyachenko, Dennis Hogan, Brandon Adams, Mate Korobov, Hugo Centeno Jr. All 5 of these opponents are top-ranked opponents. These fighters were obviously in his ranking for him to defend his title 5 effing times against these guys. And guess what? He did a very good job. He performed very well. So please, explain to me, who are the bums that Charlo is facing? He's facing top-tier competition. He's facing guys that are ranked within his belt organization, i.e. the WBC. So either way, is it Charlo that's avoiding Canelo, or is it Canelo avoiding Charlo, and Canelo's not fighting his toughest competition? And we already know what Charlo does. We already know what Charlo is doing to fight the best. He fought J-Rock. He fought Sebastian Highland, or Jorge Sebastian Highland, which he was actually supposed to be a very tough opponent, by the way. And if you look at it, Sebastian was from Argentina, which I want to say he was signed with PBC, if I'm not mistaken, and he actually won a couple titles here and there. Not too sure about that, but either way, it's like Charlo's fighting whoever's put in front of him. But I will always say that Charlo is better than Canelo, because Charlo has been trying to fight the best ever since he got into, his very first, division. Prior to the James Kirkland fight with Canelo, Canelo was supposed to fight his brother, Jermall Charlo. They were both calling out Canelo at 154, and then what did Canelo do? He then fought James Kirkland, which he made Kirkland fight him on short notice, and Kirkland couldn't even have his trainer at the fight. That just shows that Canelo, he is an absolute retard, and he is afraid of getting his ass beat again. And this is after, after or before the Floyd Mayweather fight, leading up to him losing. But either way, it's like Canelo, he doesn't fight people on a fair, on a fair playing field. He obviously needs you to be at a disadvantage, and then that's really where Canelo, makes himself look all good for the cameras and, with the media and shit. And, that's what gets me pissed about him. But either way, Charlo, he has a way more stronger resume. He did everything what he had to do. He got really good wins. I could even name more opponents that he has faced. He beat Michael Finney. I've heard something about him. I think he's a decent fighter, by the way. But, he beat him. He beat Cornelius Bunridge, who was actually, old at the time. But, he did his thing. He was actually a pretty good fighter on the come up. He actually won the IBF Super Welterweight title against Carlos Molina. So he was actually defending his title against Jermall Charlo. and that's where Jermall Charlo became, champion at 154. And yeah, ever since then, Jermall Charlo, he's been trying to chase all the best names. He beat, Wilkie Camphert. He was actually a good fighter, by the way, at the time. But yeah, he beat the shit out of him. Beat the shit out of Austin Trout. That was actually a very tough fight, by the way. J-Rock beat the shit out of Julian Williams. No disrespect no disrespect to J-Rock. I have a lot of respect for him. Shout out to Philadelphia. And Charlo has also beat Sebastian Highland. That was a decent opponent. Obviously, he fought him in at a catch weight, which I guess he didn't make weight, so the title was not on the line. But after that, he then fought Hugo. Or actually, no, this is at middleweight. So I think he just moved up, and he just gave away his IBF to his brother or whoever took the belt at the time. But yeah, he fought Sebastian Highland, then fought Hugo for the WBC World Middleweight title, and then beat Matej Korobov, and then he beat Brandon Adams for the real WBC middleweight title, which he was supposed to fight Canelo, which Canelo was supposed to be the champion for the middleweight division at the time for the WBC, and I guess he never did anything with that. And then after that was Dennis Hogan and Sergey Derevyanchenko. So yeah, Charlo has championship belt experience, so I don't know why people say Charlo, he's fighting bums, when clearly I just stated that his competition is way stronger than Canelo's. So either way, let's just make this damn fight happen. Canelo Alvarez is avoiding Jermall Charlo, and these fights just need to come to fruition and just get it down. So please, please share this video. Do what you gotta do, let's try to push for this fight. I really want to see Canelo get his ass beat by Jermall Charlo. It would be a very good ass whooping for Jermall Charlo to give Canelo. And if you Canelo fans really think Charlo is not that good, then let's actually see it, because I just want to see the fight. I don't care about what Canelo says or what he does with his life. I just want to see Canelo face, with the best tier competition. But that's my video. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, bye.